"You are a useless man. You are giving me 10K for soup. What soup do you want me to prepare with that chicken change? Is it not your mates that are giving their wives 50K? All you know how to do is to complain. I regret getting married to you." This is a true life story. Hit the subscribe button now as we dive in. The morning sun, usually a cheerful sight, felt like a spotlight of judgment as it streamed through the dusty windows of Mr. Chike's small apartment in the busy town of Ngozi. Mr. Chike, a man in his early 40s with kind, tired eyes and a face that easily offered a smile, was already sweating inside his neatly ironed but slightly faded shirt. He was a teacher at a respected private school, and honestly, he loved his job. The sound of children's laughter, the quiet scratch of marker on the whiteboard, it all brought him a deep, quiet joy. The children adored him because he was kind and always had an amazing story ready to tell. He enjoyed teaching, truly he did, but his salary was only just enough to manage his little family. His wife, Ngozi, and their two bright children, Kelechi and Chiamaka. Mr. Chike ran a hand over his clean-shaven face. His real burden didn't come from the classroom. It came from the living room, where a different kind of lesson was constantly being taught. He walked into the small kitchen where his wife, Ngozi, sat at the tiny table. Ngozi was a beautiful woman, but her beauty was sharp, and her movements slow, as if she were conserving energy for something truly important like painting her nails. Right now, she was doing just that, a vibrant, almost aggressive red. "Morning, dear," Mr. Chike said, forcing a cheerful lilt into his voice as he started heating water for tea. Ngozi didn't look up. "It's past 7, Chike. You're late. And did you remember to drop off my phone at the repair shop last night? My screen is completely shattered, and I need the latest model to even talk to my friends properly." Her voice was a slow, demanding drawl. Mr. Chike sighed, the steam from the kettle mirroring the vapor in his chest. "I haven't had the chance, my dear. I was marking papers late into the night. It's almost the end of term." Ngozi finally looked up, her expression a perfect mix of annoyance and disdain. Her desire was simple, to live the life of a rich society woman, full of ease and luxury. She believed that was what a proper man should provide. "Marking papers, always marking papers," she scoffed, waving her hand dismissively, almost flicking nail polish onto the table. "That's what you call hard work. While your neighbors are driving their wives the newest cars, I'm stuck here in this dusty flat, trying to keep up appearances with a shattered screen. I don't even have a decent phone to chat with my neighbors," she complained, picking up the local gossip magazines. Gossip with neighbors and painting nails. That was Ngozi's chosen occupation. Mr. Chike had tried, oh, how he had tried, to talk to her about getting a job to help with the household expenses. "Ngozi, the bills are piling up," he began, careful to keep his voice level, leaning against the counter. "If you could just consider something part-time, anything. You could even sell some of your lovely perfumes online. Anything to bring in a little extra money, just enough to ease the stress." Ngozi threw her head back and let out a short, harsh laugh. "A job? Are you serious, Chike? I told you I refuse to work for anyone who will shout at me or give me commands. That's beneath me. My job is to manage this home, which is hard enough with your miserable salary." Her eyes narrowed. "The real issue here is that you are not man enough to provide for your own family. You should just work harder, be smarter." The familiar accusation landed like a punch to Mr. Chike's gut. This was her flaw, a consuming pride and refusal to contribute, coupled with a belief that all of life's failures rested solely on her husband. His initial desire to convince her quickly evaporated, replaced by the weary acceptance of his internal conflict, the struggle between his pride as a provider and the overwhelming weight of his reality. His deepest fear was losing his family, or worse, losing himself completely to the constant pressure. He turned back to his tea, stirring it vigorously, trying to stir away the bitterness that always crept into his mouth when they had this argument. He knew, with painful certainty that she would never change. Later that day, Mr. Chike was at his desk in the empty school office. He was not just a teacher, he was also the school bursar. School fees, the lifeblood of the institution, passed directly through his hands. It was a position of trust, one he cherished, and one that required absolute integrity, a value he had always upheld. But today, integrity felt like a luxury he could no longer afford. He opened the locked metal drawer where the cash was kept. Stacks of neatly bundled school fees lay inside, smelling faintly of clean paper. His eyes, usually so focused, scanned the room nervously. His heart hammered a frantic rhythm against his ribs. Just for the electricity bill, just for Kelechi's new school uniform. It had started small, just a little loan, 20K here, 100K there, money he was certain he could replace by the end of the month. But the cycle of borrowing had become a monstrous, spiraling debt that consumed his every thought. His wife Ngozi was a relentless, bottomless pit of demands. Every week it was something new and expensive. The latest perfumes, designer clothes, costly shoes and bags, and of course, the newest, most expensive phone. His small salary was responsible for everything: the children's school fees, the family food, and every other utility bill. He was constantly running on empty, his pockets lighter than his spirit. He reached into the drawer, his hand shaking badly. He pulled out 300K. This was for the landlord who had threatened eviction 2 days ago. It was a desperate measure born of sheer terror. His motivation for doing this, however twisted, was the survival of his family and a desperate, failing attempt to buy some peace from his wife's constant abuse. He hid the money in his pocket and quickly locked the drawer. A cold dread settled in his stomach. The integrity he valued so much was now compromised, and the act left a bitter, metallic taste in his mouth. He was unhappy. This new habit of borrowing and the crushing anxiety were turning him into someone he barely recognized. Desperate, he decided to seek advice from someone he trusted. During break time, he approached Mr. Emeka, a veteran history teacher and his most trusted colleague. Mr. Emeka was quiet, wise, and had a calm demeanor. "Emeka, my friend," Mr. Chike began, pulling his colleague aside, his voice dropping to an anxious whisper. "I need advice on something personal. I'm at my wit's end with Ngozi and the money problems." He poured out his heart, explaining Ngozi's refusal to work, her endless and expensive demands, and the sheer impossibility of meeting all the family bills on his salary. He did not, however, mention the school fees, keeping that terrible secret hidden. Mr. Emeka listened patiently, nodding occasionally. When Mr. Chike finished, Mr. Emeka looked him straight in the eye. "Chike, my brother, the problem is not your salary. It is your wife's expectations and her refusal to see you as a partner," Mr. Emeka advised. "I've seen this before. Talk to her parents. They are the only people who can truly talk some sense into her. Go to her mother. Mothers have a way of getting through to their daughters." A surge of hope, fragile but real, washed over Mr. Chike. "Thank you, Emeka. Thank you so much. I'll call my mother-in-law tonight." That evening, Mr. Chike did exactly that. He called Ngozi's mother, Mama Ngozi. He chose his words carefully, explaining the escalating financial strain, his frustration over Ngozi's refusal to find work, and his honest fear for their future. He waited for the motherly concern, the promise to speak to her daughter. The response he got was a brutal plot twist he never saw coming. Mama Ngozi's voice, usually jovial, turned instantly cold. "Is that why you called, Chike? To complain about my daughter? You should be ashamed of yourself," she snapped. "Your job as a man is to provide. Work harder, provide for your family, and stop being lazy. That is what a proper husband does." Mr. Chike's hand trembled so badly that he nearly dropped the phone. He stood in the middle of his living room, dumbfounded, staring at the wall as if it held the answer to this new, crushing reality. "But Mama," he stammered, "I work 2 shifts, I mark papers till midnight." Lazy excuses, Chike. Find a side hustle, double your effort, or face the fact that you are a failure to your family. Don't call me again with such nonsense. My daughter deserves better. And she hung up. Mr. Chike stood there, the silence in the room deafening. Shock, disappointment, and a profound sense of betrayal washed over him. It was an external conflict that had just hit him from an unexpected flank. He realized he was truly alone in his struggle. The walls were closing in, and the path he was on was rapidly growing darker. The little hope he had carried minutes ago shattered completely on the floor, leaving him only with the cold, hard, unyielding weight of the truth. I have to get out of this somehow. I must. He slumped into a chair, his head heavy in his hands. He was utterly trapped. The secret debt was a monstrous shadow growing darker with each passing day. Mr. Chike's attempts to refill the bursary account were frantic, desperate balancing acts that left him perpetually drained. His sleep was haunted by visions of ledgers and angry principals. Then the inevitable happened. The discovery was clinical, quiet, and absolutely final. The principal, a stern woman named Mrs. Utch, had called him into her office with a face like thunder. She held a ledger, the ledger open on her desk. "Mr. Chike," her voice was low, cutting through the silence like a scalpel. "There is a significant discrepancy in the Term 3 school fees balance. Can you explain these multiple, unauthorized withdrawals?" Mr. Chike's carefully constructed world crumbled in an instant. His chest constricted. He felt all the blood drain from his face. He stammered, tried to explain, tried to blame the system, anything but the truth. "Ma'am, I had a financial emergency, a terrible crisis. I was going to replace it all, I swear. Just a little more time," he pleaded, tears suddenly burning his eyes. Mrs. Utch leaned back, the look on her face utterly devoid of sympathy. "Mr. Chike, we trusted you. The parents trusted you. Taking money, irrespective of the reason, especially from student funds, is against every ethical standard of this institution. It is stealing. We cannot and will not tolerate it." He tried again, listing the bills, mentioning his wife's demands, practically begging on his knees. The principal stopped him with a raised hand. "Your personal life is not our concern, Mr. Chike. You are sacked, effective immediately. Please gather your belongings and leave the premises." The words hung in the air, heavy, cold, and final. He stumbled out of the office, his school bag feeling leaden in his hand. His reputation, his job, and his meager sense of security, all gone in a single, brutal conversation. He walked home in a daze, the midday sun beating down on his head, the street a blur of noise and activity he couldn't process. When he got home, the door to his small apartment felt like the gate to a tomb. Ngozi was exactly where he'd left her, now filing her newly painted red nails, a cloud of expensive perfume hanging around her. She looked up, surprised to see him home early. "Chike, what are you doing back? Did you forget something? I need that new perfume you promised me, you know. My neighbor, Mrs. Cuckoo, just got one, and I cannot be seen with anything less." Mr. Chike slumped onto the small, worn sofa, the news too heavy to hold inside any longer. "Ngozi, I lost my job," he whispered, the words scratching his throat. "The school found out I was taking money from the bursary account to pay the bills. They sacked me." Ngozi stopped filing her nails. She didn't look shocked or sympathetic. She looked disappointed in him. "Sacked? You mean you were caught?" she asked, her voice laced with incredulous annoyance. "It's because you were not smart about it. That's why you were caught. You are such a fool, Chike." The brutal, unfeeling dismissal hit him with the force of a tidal wave. He stared at her, utterly aghast. This woman, his wife, the mother of his children, was the primary motivation for his desperate crime. Her constant pressure, her refusal to understand his financial struggles, her endless demands for luxury, had pushed him to violate the integrity he held so dear. And now, she blamed him for not being a better criminal. A cold, deadly rage, something new and frightening, began to simmer in his blood. If only she was working and supporting me. If only she was not pressuring me with these unnecessary bills. He stood up so quickly the sofa rocked. He couldn't stay here. He couldn't breathe the air this woman polluted with her self-absorption. He turned and walked out, slamming the door hard behind him without a word. The world outside was a noisy escape. He walked blindly until he reached the local bar, a dimly lit, smoky hole in the wall called the Corner Joint. He ordered the cheapest, strongest local gin they had. He needed to silence the screaming in his head, to numb the ache in his heart. He drank until his vision blurred, until the edges of the room softened, until the rage was a dull, manageable ache. He drank until he was in a complete stupor. The next morning brought a hangover that matched the crushing reality. He was jobless, he was disgraced, he was a thief, and he was broke. He didn't tell the children, Kelechi and Chiamaka, anything. They adored him, and his fear of disappointing them, of letting them down, was his only remaining anchor to reality. His new reality involved swallowing his pride, pulling on old, dusty clothes, and heading to the nearest construction site. The work was backbreaking, humiliatingly different from the dignity of the classroom, but it was honest, and it paid just enough to feed his family for the next day. He, the beloved teacher, was now a common laborer, hauling cement bags that weighed more than he did, under the harsh sun, fighting off the foreman's shouted commands, the very thing his wife was too proud to endure. The weeks melted into a grueling rhythm of manual labor and financial anxiety. The money was never enough. His debt, both the schools and the personal loans he'd accumulated, felt like a chain dragging him down a dark well. Then a cold, harsh new reality arrived: Christmas. The streets of Eni began to glitter with cheap, cheerful decorations. Music blared from every shop, the air filled with the scent of fireworks and possibility. But for Mr. Chike, Christmas was just another, more expensive day to dread. His children, Kelechi and Chiamaka, were already excited, bubbling with the anticipation of new clothes, toys, and special treats. Ngozi, of course, was the conductor of this festive demand. "Chike, the children need new Christmas clothes," Ngozi stated, not asked, one evening her eyes scanning a fashion catalog. "Chiamaka wants a new dress and Kelechi needs a suit. You know how important it is for them to look good in the Christmas photo." Mr. Chike felt the familiar pressure mount. He rubbed the bridge of his nose, the skin peeling slightly from the unforgiving sun at the construction site. "Ngozi, please, my dear. We are struggling to eat right now. I have huge debts. I am working at the site and the money is barely enough to put food on the table every day," he explained, his voice rough with exhaustion. "We can manage with last year's clothes. Please try to understand." His plea fell on deaf ears. Ngozi looked at him with that hard, unyielding expression he had come to dread. Her ultimate flaw was her profound selfishness and materialism, blinding her to his struggles. "No, Chike, no, I will not have my children looking like paupers for Christmas. You are being lazy, you must provide, Chike." Then she turned to the children, a deliberate, cruel move. "Children, tell your father what you want. Tell him to get you your new clothes. Disturb your father until he provides what you are asking for." Kelechi and Chiamaka, hearing this, immediately latched onto their father. They started a chorus of demands and pleas, clinging to his legs and hands, their innocent voices amplified by their mother's manipulation. The external conflict in his marriage had now invaded the peace of his relationship with his children. Mr. Chike stood there, trapped by his own children, driven by his wife, his head bowed. He wanted the ground to open up and swallow him whole. He felt his spirit crack. He started avoiding home. The apartment, once his sanctuary, had become a war zone of bills and demands. The bar, the corner joint, the place of his drinking habit, became his new preferred sanctuary. It was here, in the dim, smoky light of the bar, that fate, in the form of a notorious criminal, decided to make him an offer that would test his shattered integrity one last, brutal time. The air in the corner joint was thick with smoke, cheap liquor, and the low drone of local music. Mr. Chike sat alone at a scarred wooden table, staring into his drink. His new habit was this: drinking his troubles away, an hourly retreat from the demands of his home. His motivation was no longer finding a solution. It was finding temporary oblivion. He was deep in thought, replaying the day's backbreaking labor in his mind, when a shadow fell across his table. He looked up, and his heart gave a sickening lurch. Standing there was Jide. Jide was the neighborhood celebrity criminal, not a clever, organized thief, but an almost comical figure of desperation. His backstory was a legend of petty crime. He stole anything: electric irons, phones, chairs, clothes, even buckets. The most famous story was when he was caught trying to steal a pot of soup. He was constantly being arrested and released, a familiar nuisance to the police. Jide was notorious, and everyone knew to keep their distance. Nobody wanted to be seen with him. Jide, tall and wiry, gave a wide, unsettling grin and pulled a chair right up to Mr. Chike's table, uninvited. "Order us 2 more of the strong stuff," Jide instructed the bartender, his voice surprisingly deep. Mr. Chike stiffened, ready to leave, his old teacherly value of good conduct clashing violently with his current despair. He was on high alert, cautious, and ready to defend himself if Jide tried one of his tricks. But Jide was surprisingly calm, his eyes sharp and observant. "Don't run, Mr. Chike," Jide said, leaning closer once the new drinks arrived. "I'm not here to steal your watch, look at you." Mr. Chike just looked at him, not trusting himself to speak. "I've observed you," Jide continued, taking a long sip of his drink. "For a school teacher, you've been drinking a lot these days. Only 2 things make a good man drink like this: a bad woman or a bad wallet. With you, it's both, yes. Family problems, especially money issues." Mr. Chike was stunned by the accuracy. He just listened, saying nothing. "You look like a drowning man, Mr. Chike," Jide said, his voice dropping to a low conspiratorial whisper. "And a drowning man will grab anything, even a snake, to save himself." Mr. Chike, whose desire was simply to find peace and provide for his family, finally broke the silence. He spoke for the first time, his voice rough and low. "Jide," he said, looking him straight in the eye, "I am not a criminal. I have integrity. I will not get myself involved in your activities. God forbid." Jide threw his head back and laughed, a loud, booming sound that made a few heads turn. "Integrity, huh? That's what teachers have. Look where your integrity has landed you, Mr. Chike. Drinking alone, running from your wife, working like a common goat for peanuts." He paused, then leaned in close again, his breath smelling heavily of alcohol and stale tobacco. He whispered, his voice conspiratorial, "I have a solution for your problems. A quick fix, enough to buy your peace and get those Christmas clothes." Mr. Chike felt a chill run down his spine. The offer was a terrible temptation, the darkest expression of his external conflict with poverty. "What is it?" Mr. Chike asked, already knowing he shouldn't. "There's a small warehouse down the next street," Jide whispered, his eyes glittering. "They store bags of rice there. Big, heavy bags. I'm planning a little visit tonight. You could join me. Quick cash, nobody gets hurt. We move a few bags, sell them quickly in the morning, and you go buy your children the world." The image, bags of rice, money, Christmas clothes, the end of the shouting, flashed through Mr. Chike's mind. His head swam with the possibilities, but his deep-seated moral value screamed in protest. "No, Jide, never. I said I won't do it," Mr. Chike said, more firmly this time. Jide smiled again, a wry, knowing smile. He stood up slowly and clapped Mr. Chike on the shoulder, the physical contact making Mr. Chike flinch. "It's all right, teacher. You think about it. The need for a good life is stronger than the need for good morals, believe me. Talk to me tomorrow. I'll be here." Jide then walked away, his presence immediately lifting the air of danger around the table. "God forbid," Mr. Chike muttered to himself, grabbing his glass and taking a huge gulp. He was certain he would never do that. He was a teacher. He walked home late that night, the conversation with Jide an unwelcome parasite clinging to his thoughts. The street decorations suddenly seemed mocking, highlighting his failure. When he entered the apartment, he was met by his worst fear realized. Ngozi and the children were waiting for him. They descended on him immediately. "The money, Chike. We need the money for our Christmas clothes," Ngozi yelled, immediately grasping his trousers and holding him hostage. Kelechi and Chiamaka, mimicking their mother, latched onto his other leg, a chorus of loud, shrill demands rising from their little bodies. They were shouting at him, and he, the man who yearned for a quiet, respectable life, was trapped in the middle of a loud, humiliating siege by his own family. Mr. Chike felt his resolve snap. The shame was absolute. He wanted to disappear completely. "I don't have it. I told you I don't have any money," he screamed, his voice raw, finally losing all pretense of control. Ngozi's eyes, usually so focused on luxury, were cold with a frightening resolve. They let him go only to deliver a cruel ultimatum. 2 days, Chike, 2 days. You bring us the money or you face the consequences. We will not be shamed this Christmas. They left him sitting alone in the dark, the echoes of their demands ringing in the oppressive silence. He sat up all night, unable to sleep, the sheer terror of his debt and the relentless demands of his family crushing him. He tried calling friends, begging for a loan, but every voice on the other end gave a quick, sharp excuse, offering no help. He was truly cornered. He thought about the integrity he so proudly displayed to Jide. What good was integrity if his children would be shamed and his family evicted? What good was it if it led to starvation and eternal debt? He closed his eyes. It is only once, just this once for my children's happiness for Christmas. The dawn broke over a man who had made a terrible, irreversible decision. He stood up, his face grim, and knew exactly where he had to go. His descent into the abyss was complete. Mr. Chike walked with a grim determination, the sun already high and hot. His new motivation was a blend of desperation and a warped sense of fatherly duty. He had to secure Christmas for his children, even if it meant sacrificing the last shred of his dignity and integrity. He found Jide where he usually was, in the shadow of a decaying, uncompleted building, the air thick with the acrid smell of burning dry leaves. Jide sat on a broken cement block, smoking a cheap cigarette. The moment Jide saw him, he smiled a knowing, triumphant grin. "I knew you'd come, teacher. The smell of desperation is stronger than any Bible verse," Jide said, extinguishing his cigarette. Mr. Chike ignored the mockery. "I'm here," he said bluntly, his voice flat. "But only once, just this one time. This is only to settle my family and buy some peace." "Don't worry about the future, Mr. Chike," Jide chuckled. "Worry about tonight. I'll make a respectable man out of you yet." Jide gave him instructions on where to meet later that night. The location was a dark, deserted alley that ran behind the local market. As the town of Eni wound down for the night, Mr. Chike made his way to the alley. He felt like a ghost in his own life, moving through the shadows toward a destiny he had vehemently rejected just hours ago. Jide was waiting, dressed in dark clothes, his face almost invisible in the gloom. "You're late, teacher. Hurry up," Jide whispered, already moving. They walked silently for a few minutes until they reached the large metal gate of a commercial warehouse complex. The external conflict he was entering was terrifying, his heart beating a frantic rat-a-tat against his ribs. The gate was locked. Mr. Chike felt a surge of adrenaline mixed with relief. Maybe this is it. Maybe we go home now. Maybe God is still on my side. But Jide was already reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a key, small and old, and with a practiced twist, unlocked the heavy gate. "How did you get that?" Mr. Chike whispered, horrified. "I told you, teacher," Jide grinned. "I'm good at what I do. Now follow me, no turning back." Jide slipped inside, signaling for Mr. Chike to follow. Mr. Chike hesitated, his value of honesty screaming a final, desperate warning. He quickly pushed the thought away. Only once. Christmas. He slipped inside, the gate swinging shut silently behind them. They moved quickly through the dark compound. Jide stopped at another door, a smaller access point to the main building. He opened it, and the sight that met Mr. Chike's eyes was astonishing. Inside, stacked high almost to the ceiling, were mountains of bags of rice. Mr. Chike had never seen so much rice in his entire life. The sheer quantity overwhelmed him. "See, teacher," Jide whispered, his voice excited. "Enough to feed the whole town. We only need 2. Jide, with years of criminal habit and experience, quickly hefted one bag onto his head. He helped Mr. Chike lift the heavy, rough sack onto his head as well. The weight was crushing, the rough sack scratching his skin, a physical manifestation of his guilt. They walked slowly, heavily, retracing their steps toward the outer gate. Jide, however, seemed to move with a supernatural, easy speed. They reached the gate. Jide inserted the key, turned it, and they stepped out of the shadows. It was at that exact moment a man emerged from a nearby, poorly lit corner, a security guard who had been taking a break. The guard spotted them immediately. "Who are you guys and where are you going?" The man shouted loudly, his voice echoing in the still night air. The noise was the trigger. Jide, whose flaw might be petty theft but whose strength was survival, dropped the bag of rice instantly and bolted. He ran like a startled rabbit, disappearing into the maze of alleys down the street. The guard, seeing the fleeing figure and the abandoned bag, started shouting at the top of his lungs. "Thief! Thief! Thief!" The alarm was raised instantly. Dogs began to bark. Lights flickered on in the nearby houses, and men, awakened by the familiar cry of thief, began to dash out of their homes in pursuit. Mr. Chike was terrified. He tried to run, the heavy bag of rice still crushing his head, digging into his already aching shoulders. He was exhausted, weakened by weeks of worry and hunger. He couldn't move fast. He was caught quickly, easily. A small, angry mob surrounded him. They ignored the rice and the fleeting figure of Jide. They had only one target. They were tired of the constant small-time robberies plaguing their community, and they wanted to make an example. "It's him, he's the one stealing things," a man yelled, grabbing Mr. Chike by the neck of his shirt. "Don't listen to him, he's lying, he's a thief," another screamed. Before Mr. Chike could even form a single coherent thought, the blows began to rain down on him. Fists, sticks, kicks, they hit him everywhere. He dropped the bag of rice, clutching his head, screaming in pain and denial. I'm a teacher. It's my first time. Please listen to me," he pleaded, trying to explain his family's debt, his wife's demands, his single, horrible act of desperation. But no one listened. They were too angry, too driven by the desire for swift, brutal jungle justice. They saw a thief, and that was all that mattered. Then from the darkness, a familiar voice cut through the chaos. "Stop, stop, that's my husband." Ngozi, awakened by the shouting that had reached their street, ran into the mob. She pushed her way through, screaming, grabbing the arms of the men hitting him. "He's innocent. He wouldn't steal. Please, he's a good man," she cried, her expensive perfumes now mixing with the sweat and dust of the street. The men paused, momentarily confused. But then a voice, colder and crueler than the rest, shouted, "They always cry innocence. Kill him. This is how we send a message." The word kill seemed to unlock a terrible new phase of the brutality. The men pushed Ngozi aside, ignoring her desperate, choked cries. Someone, an older man with hate-filled eyes, grabbed a used rubber tire from a nearby stall and rolled it toward the center of the mob. Mr. Chike saw the tire. He knew what it meant. The horrifying reality of his impending death, The consequence of his single, desperate flaw and choice hit him with crushing finality. He looked at Ngozi, her face a mask of terror, her tears real for the first time in a long time. In her eyes, he saw a terrible, dawning realization. She knew she had pushed him to this. She had pushed him to his death. The crowd rolled the tire onto his neck, pressing his face into the dirt. A terrible pressure settled over him. Then he heard the dreadful sound of liquid splashing onto his clothes, mixing with his blood. Fuel. The night, the rice, the shame, his life. Everything was about to end in a flash of terrible heat. The heavy scent of petrol hung in the air, a sickening, terrifying smell that drowned out all other scents. Mr. Chike, pinned to the ground with the rough tire pressing hard against his neck, could only watch as the small mob, fueled by communal rage and the desire for brutal jungle justice, prepared the final act. His wife, Ngozi, was no longer yelling. Her voice was a raw, desperate howl of pure, unadulterated pain. She was on her knees, clawing at the men, her newly painted red nails snapping against the rough fabric of their trousers. "No, please, he's innocent," she screamed, her elaborate Christmas demands forgotten, replaced by a terrible, crushing regret. "It's my fault, please, I did this." But her cries were useless. The momentum of the mob was too strong. They were deaf to his pleas and her shrieks. A man stepped forward, holding a flickering match. In the brief, bright light of the flame, Mr. Chike saw his wife's face one last time. It was a face contorted by horror and a terrible, dawning truth. She had pushed him to his death. He closed his eyes. A whoosh, a brief, terrible roar. Then fire. The heat was instantaneous, an agonizing, all-consuming pain that devoured him. The smoke filled his lungs, choking the very life out of him. The last sounds he heard were the triumphant shouts of the crowd and the hysterical, shattering cries of his wife, Ngozi. The fire went out. Silence, broken only by Ngozi's low, broken sobs, descended upon the street. The men, their terrible justice complete, slowly dispersed, leaving behind a charred patch of ground and the horrific silhouette of Mr. Chike. Ngozi crawled toward the remains of her husband, her expensive clothes torn, her hair dusted with ash. She gathered the black, burned remnants of what was once the man who had loved her, who had worked tirelessly for her, and whose quiet integrity she had scorned. She wept, not just for the loss, but for the devastating finality of her flaw. Her selfishness and greed had murdered her husband. The story teaches that unchecked greed, selfishness, and pressure can destroy families and lives. Integrity and honesty are invaluable, but they can be compromised when desperation and external pressures take over. True responsibility means balancing personal desires with the well-being of loved ones, or the consequences can be tragically irreversible. We hope you enjoyed this powerful story. Please share your thoughts and let us know what lessons you learned in the comment section. We'd love to hear from you. And guess what? Another inspiring and educative story is coming your way in just a few days. So make sure to subscribe to this channel and turn on your notification bell so you'll be the first to watch when it drops. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video and share it with your friends and family. Thank you so much for watching. Stay inspired and God bless you.